Hey guys, how you doing? Frank Gonzalez, G&G Productions, bringing you another video. Today we're going to be doing a video on cooking, as if it wasn't obvious enough with the apron and the kitchen. But today we're going to be doing Cuban black beans and white rice. Super simple, not that difficult. A lot of people get discouraged because they have to start it from scratch. They think they have to soak the beans overnight. That's a big farce if you use a pressure cooker, which you should not be intimidated by. I'm going to walk you through it step by step. But we are going to use a pressure cooker to cook our black beans, and the ingredients are real simple. I'll list them here so you can see what it is that we need, and I'll show you a little picture that I did, a little roving video, if you will, of the ingredients. Real basic ingredients, not a whole lot of prep time, just some chopping, some boiling, and we're done. Cook the rice at the same time, and we're going to make a delicious black beans and white rice. So let's get started. Let's get to it.
Brought to you by G&G Productions.
All right, guys, like the intro said, black beans and white rice. This is mom's recipe going back a very long time. Nice and easy. We are going to be using a pressure cooker, like I said. Don't get intimidated. Very simple to use. Just a lot of people don't know how to use pressure cookers, so they opt not to use them, and they use canned beans, which is a disgrace. But we're going to be doing black beans, Cuban black beans from scratch, and white rice. So let's get to it and start the process. As you can see, I have the ingredients listed here. Nice and simple: salt, pepper, onions, garlic, bell peppers, bay leaves, and bacon. Real simple ingredients, not a whole lot of stuff to it. I said prep time is about 20 minutes, cook time 20 minutes, depending on what brand of beans we are going to use. I do use Goya black beans, and depending on what type of brand of beans you use, it does take longer or shorter time to make the beans softer in the pressure cooker. So be aware that when you do get these different types or different brands of beans, your cooking times are going to vary depending on what type of brand it is. So just keep that in mind. All right, guys, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to wash our beans. They're picked, they're in the dirt, so we want to wash any dirt that might be in the bag, and we want to get any rocks that potentially are in the bag. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to use a colander, and we're going to wash the beans. All right, guys, so now that your beans are rinsed, we're going to add those beans, take the water out of them, add those beans to your pressure cooker, and we're going to add water. I don't use tap water with my beans, for the simple fact that my water where I'm at tastes very chlorinated. It tastes like that chlorine taste. It's not very nice. So I have a water filter, an Alexa Pure Pearl water filter. I'll put that in the link in the description below, so if you're interested in that, you can get it. It's really good because it works on gravity, and you don't need any power to run that water filter. It's just a self-draining water filter. So if there ever is a blackout or hurricanes or whatever, you don't need power to run that water filter, and the water does taste actually very, very good coming out of that. All right, so we've added the beans to the pressure cooker. Now we're going to add about 3 cups of water per 1 cup of beans. I use the 24-ounce bag of beans, and it comes out to a little more, but through trial and error, I found out that around 8 cups of water, when you add that 8 cups of water to the pressure cooker, that seems to be about enough water for the beans to not soak it all up and they're not all dry and become a paste. So about 8 cups of water, maybe 10, play around with that, but around 8 cups of water is what we're going to use as a standard measurement for our beans for a 24-ounce bag of black beans. Okay, once we've added the water, now I'm just gonna get real simple. I'm gonna use a green pepper. I'm gonna cut it in half, cut the seeds out, throw that entire half of a green pepper in the pot. I'm gonna use a couple heads of garlic, a couple cloves of garlic. I'm gonna rip the film, if you will, that's on there and throw those whole in there. I'm gonna use 1 sweet onion. I'm gonna chop that onion in half, maybe cut it 2 more times, and throw that entire onion in the water when it's about ready to boil. So now we have our water, we have our bell peppers, our garlic and our onion. We're also gonna add a couple bay leaves to the water. So a couple bay leaves as well. And now this is where we add our salt. It's usually to taste, but I found out through trial and error, if I use 1 tablespoon of salt to a 24-ounce bag of beans with 8 cups of water, that seems to be just about right for a great taste. It's not too salty, it's not too bland, it's just on it. If you feel you need more salt after you've added that tablespoon of salt, only add salt a teaspoon at a time, because once you put it in there, you can't take it back, but you could always add more. All right, so our basic ingredients are there. Now they're in the pressure cooker. I want to turn my pressure cooker to high with the lid off. And I'm gonna wait for that water to boil. Now, while that water is boiling, I'm gonna make my sofrito. My sofrito consists of bell peppers, onions, garlic, chopped bacon, and about 2 to 3 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil. I finely cut my onions, peppers, and garlic very, very fine. I don't like to have the big chunks of it in the beans, so I chop them very, very finely, very, very small. And while that water is waiting for it to boil so I can put the lid on, that's where I'm gonna be cutting, chopping, making the sofrito. And once the water starts to boil, I'm gonna put the pressure cooker lid on, and now I'm gonna put the little tip on top, the pressure regulator tip on top, and let that boil. I'm gonna let that run for about 20 minutes or so. While that pressure cooker is doing its job, remember pressure cookers speed up the cooking process, so you'll see a lot of videos out there that tell you to soak your beans overnight. There's no need to soak your beans overnight if you're using a pressure cooker, because that's the whole idea behind using a pressure cooker. It speeds up the cooking process through heat and pressure. So pressure cooker is going, it's on, it's boiling. Now we're gonna finalize our sofrito, right? So we're cooking it in a non-stick pot or non-stick pan. We're gonna use our 3 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil, peppers, onions, garlic, finely chopped. And when I mean finely chopped, you'll see what I'm talking about. And then we're gonna use extra dry cooking wine. When we add the extra dry cooking wine, put about 1/2 cup in there, and we're gonna let that reduce down until all the fluids build off and it becomes kind of like a thicker paste. By the time that's all done, more or less your 20 minutes are done with your black beans in the pressure cooker. And then we're gonna slowly release the pressure off that pressure cooker, and I'll explain that here in a second. Okay guys, so as I said, let's get into the chopping now. I like to use a meat cleaver type knife just because it's a lot heavier in the hand. You don't have to work as hard, in my opinion, and I get it really, really sharp. This is very, very sharp. Just trust me on that, all right? Second half of the bell pepper, obviously, I'm gonna take the seeds out as well. We don't need that. And I finely chop this because bell peppers don't shrink when you cook them. They stay the same size throughout, no matter what. So I like to chop them down because I don't like to be biting into big pieces of bell pepper. I don't like the certain taste to overwhelm others. You shouldn't have any one ingredient overwhelming others. Everything should be uniform tasting in your mouth. So I'm just gonna cut this lengthwise. So one of the reasons I like to use a meat cleaver as well, because it has a large handle and I can sit there and chop whatever it is that I'm chopping a lot more effortlessly. This is a heavy knife. The weight of the knife itself comes down on the product that you're chopping, and it makes it a lot easier and a lot quicker, especially if the knife is very, very sharp. So always keep a nice sharp knife when you're doing chopping, obviously. So as I said before, when I'm chopping, I don't play around. I really like to finely chop all my ingredients. I like them almost to liquefy in the whatever it is that I'm making, to where it just becomes almost non-existent to the palate. You know you're tasting something, but you don't know what, because you don't find any consistency or any textures in there, but you know that something tastes good in there. And that's part of the whole process of cooking. You don't want any one flavor to overwhelm another one. So as you can see, the chopping process just continues. And you can see almost to where it starts to liquefy almost, because it's getting chopped so finely. If you have a food processor, you could use a food processor as well. That speeds it up a lot more. I didn't feel like lugging out my food processor. I actually kind of enjoy using this big meat cleaver. All right, so that's about the consistency you want it, right? That's obviously to your liking. This is how I like it. But obviously, if you want bigger chunks, you could stop cutting way before. If you like them even smaller, you can keep going from here. But this is where I like it, so this is where I'm gonna stop. And when using a meat cleaver, it's also a lot handier to put the product on the meat cleaver itself and put it into the bowl. Right? It goes a lot faster. Okay, so we're ready to stop chopping the rest of the ingredients. What's left is now we have to add the rest of the bell pepper to the sofrito to make that. That's already chopped up. We have to chop up the onion, the garlic, and the bacon still has to be added. On the garlic, just take these cloves apart from each other. Like I showed you before, all you need to do is just smash it with the knife or the meat cleaver, smash it down, and that skin will come off, right? Just give a good smashing, just like that. And then cut the ends off of it, of the garlic, because that can be a little bitter if it stays on. So here we go, you see all the skin just coming off of that, right? Nice and convenient. Now we're gonna just have a bunch of ball cloves of garlic. And I have a nice, easy way for you to get rid of that and chop it up nicely. All right, here's one that still has a skin on it. Let's get rid of that. Once you cut the ends off this garlic here and just hold the knife down, a lot of that stuff will come off. So now as you see here, we have quite a bit of garlic cloves. And what I use is a garlic press, right? This thing is awesome. You could either put it in this function here to where it comes out like a paste, or if you put it in this function here, it'll come out in slices. And I'll do it in slices because I want to chop this up a little bit more than it already is. So I'll put that in there, press it down, and as you can see, it comes out already in pieces. And when I take the knife to it, it's really effortless and doesn't take long at all. All right, so there we go. Nice big mountain of garlic. And I'm just gonna rinse some of the skin off the knife, off the cleaver. All right, and then just start cutting that garlic, right? Just start chopping. And you can see it's already becoming smaller and smaller because of the fact you put it through that garlic press already. I'll put a description in the link below also to this cleaver. I saw it just looking for knives one day for cooking knives, and I loved it so much that I actually have one for the house, and I have one for work. So I have one at both places because it's just such an awesome knife, and everybody seems to like it as well. And there you go, just making quick work of that garlic, to where normally if you were to chop this without that grill press or the grill press the garlic press, you'd still be chopping it it would still be in larger pieces. So as you can see, it's in such small pieces that when I start to do this in the frying pan, it's gonna go away, liquefy, and nothing but that garlic juice, that wonderful garlic juice, is gonna stay behind. So now we're ready to start cutting that onion. And I know certain people have their must-haves on how you slice an onion. It doesn't matter as long as you just cut it in small pieces. Obviously there's ways to cut this that are going to be more time efficient. But if you just cut it in half and then start chopping at it. And the meat cleaver, like I said, does really fast work of everything you're chopping. I know in a lot of Asian countries it is the preferred knife because of the fact that it's so versatile. So here we go. We're just gonna start chopping these onions, right? If you find that you start to tear up because you're cutting an onion, if you run that onion under water and continue chopping it, it'll take that that teariness away. But I can't do that now because this is in a million pieces. But if you're just cutting a whole onion by itself and you start to tear up because of the juices that are getting in your eye, if you run that onion under water, it takes care of that problem. And like I said, these onions, peppers, and garlic, this is gonna be for the sofrito. This is what's gonna give our flavor to our black beans. Black beans and the mixture that it is right now in the pot is very bland. So we have to add this to it to give it some type of flavor. Also, if you want to grab a little handful or a pinch of these onions, put it off to the side, and once you serve your black beans and rice, you could put these onions over, just sprinkled over the black beans as a garnish, and it looks kind of nice all sprinkled on top of the black beans. And the last ingredient we have to cut is going to be our bacon, and that one, even with a nice, sharp, big, heavy knife, takes a while. So I'll show you about how much bacon I use. That corresponds to a 24-ounce bag of beans. And obviously that's gonna be to your liking as well. All right, so before we get to the bacon, I hear the pot of water is boiling back there, so let's go over there and show you how we put the lid on and get that ready to be cooked under pressure. So let's go on over there. All right, so as you can see, the water is boiling there. I have some boiling bubbles. We're gonna stir this around one time, get those flavors all together. We have the bay leaves, salt, pepper, onions, garlic, and bell peppers. And there's an arrow on the lid right there. Not sure if you can see it. Right, and there's an arrow on the handle right there. You line up those two arrows. There you go. And then you click that. Make sure it's locked into place. And then the most important thing you can put on this is this pressure regulating device, right? And make sure you hear it snap. Just like that, right? Once it snaps into place, you're good to go. Let this thing do its work. And I'm gonna turn this up a little higher to around 5 or 6, halfway there. And all we have to do is now, once this is here, I'm gonna set my timer for 20 minutes and let this boil for 20 minutes. All right, so we're done cutting up our bacon. You see it's in small pieces here. I did a good job as I could. This knife is very, very sharp, but bacon is one of those tricky things to cut. So it's all cut now. You can hear the pressure cooker doing its job back there. The steam is slowly being released when there's too much pressure. But we have our bacon, green peppers, onions, garlic, finely chopped, minced if you will. Now we're gonna cook it up in the frying pan with some extra virgin olive oil and some white wine, extra dry white wine. Reduce it down, and then that should be it for the 20 minutes on the pressure cooker. We're gonna open the lid and I'll show you how that goes. It's a process. You just can't open it up. It's under tremendous amounts of pressure. First time I did that, I had a surprise and there was black beans everywhere. All right, so let's go on over and start making the sofrito. All right, so here we are making the sofrito. I have my pot here. I've preheated it, and I'm gonna put this on high to start off with. I'm gonna get the pan nice and hot, and I'm gonna add about 3 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil. Anytime you're cooking, make sure you use extra virgin olive oil. It really is the best. It has the best flavor, and it stands up really good to high heat. And I'm just showing this for exactness. You can eyeball this after a while. Just so you can see what 3 tablespoons of olive oil looks like. Something like that. And we're gonna let that pan get nice and hot. Let the oil heat up. And you can hear the pressure cooker really taking effect now, doing its job. And we have about 3 minutes left on that pressure cooker until we take the lid off and see if the beans are soft enough for our liking. All right, so we're gonna spread the oil around. And the first thing I'm gonna add is the bacon. I'm gonna add the bacon first because it takes the longest to cook. If you add the bacon along with your peppers and onions, your peppers and onions are gonna be burnt almost. They're gonna be way too soft, and they're not gonna be cooked evenly. So your bacon's gonna be undercooked, and your peppers and onions are gonna be overcooked. So that's why you put the bacon in here first. And once you see that it starts to turn a golden brown, then that's when you're gonna add peppers, onions, and garlic. The timer for our pressure cooker has gone off, as you can hear it. We'll go ahead and stop that, right? And we're gonna turn the heat off and let that cool off. A lot of people that don't know how to use a pressure cooker, they make the big, colossal mistake of as soon as the timer is off, they take the lid off, and you gotta remember all that stuff is under a tremendous amount of pressure, and it could seriously hurt you. So we're gonna let that cool off for a little bit while we're cooking the sofrito here. The bacon's in the pan, and I'm gonna show you how to take that lid off safely and correctly. Okay guys, so I brought my pressure cooker over to the sink, and I'm gonna show you guys how to properly release the pressure on here and take the lid off. If you can see that red button there, it's pushed up. That means that it's still under pressure. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn this to cold water, and I'm just gonna run cold water over the pressure cooker, right? For a while, on the sides, on the top, for a while. Now, my pressure regulating device, I don't hear having steam escape anymore, so I'm gonna take that off. It's okay to take that off, that's not a problem. And I'm gonna keep dousing this with water. So now, if you look at that red button, it's no longer in a pushed up position, but it's now in a down position. And that means that it's safe enough to open the lid and it's not under pressure anymore. But because I've had bad experiences with these, I know that I like to douse it a little longer. So I'm just gonna throw cold water on here for a while, right? And it's still kind of hot to the touch. Nice and easy there. Yep. So now you can feel the lid, you can feel the sides, that it's not really that hot anymore. And that's a good indicator to let you know that it's no longer under pressure. So now, nice and easy, I just loosen the lid. If this had been under pressure by now, this lid would have exploded off. And there you go, guys. We have that wonderful bean concoction down there. Now, remember the peppers and onions and garlic that I put in there, whole without peeling or anything like that? Now we're gonna take those out because those were just added for flavor. So now, these big pieces of pepper and onion and the whole pieces, the whole cloves of garlic, we're gonna take those out because they were just used for flavoring. It's not really, they don't look very nice in there. When you go to eat these black beans and you have these giant pieces of, peppers and onions and stuff. Especially if you bite into one of these cloves of garlic, that'll be nice for your breath. You'll feel that coming out of your pores for the next day or so. So let's do as good a job as we can to take everything out. So now what we can do is we can take a bean or two and try and squish it between your fingers, see if it'll smush, and then chew on it and see if it's soft enough. And that's pretty soft right there. It could go slightly softer, but not too bad. So I'm gonna let this just relax a little bit and just have the flavors come together. And now I'm gonna go back to the sofrito that's on the stove. All right, guys, so I'm back in the stove. The bacon has been cooking this entire time. I'm gonna grab the pot of beans and bring this over to the stove because eventually I'm gonna add all this stuff to it. And so I'm gonna just have that next to it. So you can see the bacon, it's nice and golden brown. It's not dark, no dark pieces. It's cooked fairly good enough to where now I could add the rest of the stuff and it's gonna cook evenly, right? And we're just gonna pour that all in there. There we go. And just bring that all together. And this is where the whole house really starts to smell lovely. When you get all that bacon, olive oil, peppers, garlic, onions. Yeah, the neighbors will smell that. Come knocking at your door. So just keep giving a stir occasionally, right? Nice and easy. You'll see that soften up and become softer. If you want to make it cook a little quicker, what you can do is make that steam work for you. A lot of that steam's escaping, not being beneficial to the cooking process. So if you just add that lid, that steam will now come up and then cut back down on itself, increasing the heat in that pot, that covered pot, and it'll cook the food faster and more evenly as well. All right, so we can uncover that, see how it's going. A lot of those juices are flowing. That's nice and soft now. So when you see that the onions have softened up and they're not crispy or tight like they were when you first added them, and everything's come together, you could start to see the peppers have become a little lighter now. They're not as dark as they were. That's a key to let you know that's around the time where you want to add your white wine, right? And this is just dry cooking wine. You can find it in the international food section or any cheap dry cooking wine. It'll do. You don't have to spend a whole lot of money. And I don't know, maybe about 1/3 of a cup, half a cup, put that in there. And you talk about fragrances. You add that white wine with the onions, peppers, garlic, bacon. Oh yeah. The dogs across the street start howling for that stuff now. So then you'll see it that there's a lot of liquid in here now, and you're gonna cook this and reduce that liquid down, and then you'll see this takes on the consistency of like a thicker paste. So just stir that around and enjoy the fragrance that comes out of that. And once you've added the white wine, you no longer want to put the lid on. You want to cook it with the lid off of it so that alcohol will evaporate, and what you have left is the paste. A nice thicker sauce. And then speaking of sauces or thickening up, I'll show you a trick how to get your beans to be more pasty. So there you go. Let's let that cook off there for a minute. Now let's move on over to the beans so I can show you something about there. All right, now for the beans, if you can see, it's just beans and water. It doesn't look like your traditional Cuban beans that are kind of like pasty, if you will. Let's get that bay leaf out of there. All right, because that's not really edible. It just adds flavor. All right, so what you do is you get your measuring cup and you get just the beans, and you get about half a cup of beans, and I'll show you a little something here. All right, so now you have about half a cup of beans in a cup. And if you have a pestle and mortar, you're like, what's that? It's that stone thing and stone bowl. And what you do is you smash these beans, and that's gonna make a paste. And you just continue to smash these beans until you don't have any recognizable beans anymore. It's just all a paste. And then after a while, it becomes so thick that it sticks to the sides and everything. And then I'll show you a little something how to make it more pleasing, or how to manage it a little bit better. So we're gonna smash this, right? Keep going. And I'll fast forward so you don't have to watch all of this. All right, so once you've made a paste out of that, this is actually how you make refried beans as well. But once you made a paste out of this, just add this back to the bean pot. All right, and then break that paste up. There you go. So you'll see that paste right there, just kind of mess around. Don't push it too hard because you don't want to smash the rest of the beans that are in that pot. Just kind of stir it around. And then once you put the lid on this again and pressurize it for the second time, a lot of that will dissipate. So there you go. You're starting to see that now it's become a lot more thicker, right? That's what you're more accustomed to. And if you see pieces of garlic or onion on there while you're stirring it, just to go ahead and take them out. And just keep stirring, stirring, stirring. Nothing, don't get too crazy with it because you don't want to smash the other beans. Just a nice light stir, and get the beans that are off the bottom of the pan so they don't stick on there and burn. You want to constantly see it. So now, if you look on there, you have that nice looking pasty black bean that you're used to looking at. So now you see that all the alcohol has burned off of it and it's just a paste. Now what we're gonna do is just add it to the black beans. There we go. All right, take that off, turn your burner off. And we're just gonna mix that in. Nice and easy. You don't want to be too aggressive stirring that because you don't want to break apart the beans that are already in there, the good beans. There you go. So now, if you noticed, you'll see a lot of that bacon blanch out. It's blanched now instead of brown, crispy how it was. That's because for some reason or another, bacon doesn't stay crispy when it's put in a fluid. It goes back to its flaccid state and it blanches, it turns white. So a lot of people don't like to see that or eat it. It doesn't look appealing to them. So what I'll do is I'll just get some tongs and I'll pick out as much of that bacon as I can. And you'll see how different that looks. Now, this is gonna be time consuming, but it really does change this dish. It makes it more appealing, number one. And the flavor of the bacon is already in the beans. So we'll go ahead and take that out. And I won't bore you with how I do this, but just know that I go ahead and go through, get a nice pair of tongs that are even, and just go ahead and take out as much of the bacon as you can. Obviously, the bigger chunks, the better. All right, so now if you see, there's really not that much liquid in there. It's more beans than anything. So once you finish cooking this, it's gonna be the beans are gonna suck up most of that water. So if you look at it, it's mostly beans and not a whole lot of water. So we're gonna add a little bit more water, probably about 2 more cups. And we're gonna set this on high for now because we wanna set this up to get ready to put the lid back on. All right, so we're gonna set this up now to put the lid on and cook it under pressure one more time. And as long as we just start to see steam come out, it doesn't have to go into a full rolling boil for us to put the lid back on. Just as long as we start to see a little steam, that's when we can go ahead and put the lid back on. But in the meantime, we're gonna go ahead and make our rice so we could have something to accompany the beans. But before we do that, let's go ahead and add 2 more cups of water to these beans here. All right, that's 2 cups of filtered water, just because it'll taste better. So now you could see that there's quite a bit of water to bean ratio, but once we start boiling this under pressure, the beans are going to suck up a lot of this moisture, so it'll look the way you would think it would look. And there's a lot of floating bacon in there now as well, so if you wanted to, you could just get a slotted spoon and grab that bacon that's floating on there instead of using the tongs. It's very tedious work. And then just scoop that bacon up that's floating on there. All right, guys, so when it comes to cooking rice, it's very, very simple. I always prefer jasmine rice when cooking Cuban food. Some people prefer basmati rice. I feel that the grain is longer with basmati rice and not as flavorful. I think jasmine rice definitely is more flavorful. So I'm gonna make 2 cups of rice, and when making rice, always remember it's a 1-to-1 ratio. So I have 2 cups of rice here, and I'm gonna add 2 cups of water, but before I do that, I'm gonna add olive oil. And the reason I add olive oil before I add the water is what happens when you add oil and water. They don't mix, right? But when you add the olive oil to the grain before you put the water and stir it around, and then when I add the olive oil and I stir this, all right, you'll notice, number one, make sure that it's all evenly coated, it's not clumped up, but make sure that the oil is thoroughly mixed into the rice, mixed in everywhere to the rice. And you'll notice that that oil is gonna stick to the grain, and when I add the water, it's not gonna separate, which is what usually happens when people add the rice. They add the water, then they add the olive oil, and the oil just stays at the top. To where when you do this method, the oil stays evenly distributed onto the grain. Don't ask me how that is, but it just is. And I'm gonna do about a teaspoon of salt, more or less, right? And let's mix that in. And don't worry about mixing it in too much, because when you add the water, that's gonna get mixed in. So I added 2 cups of rice. Now I'm gonna add 2 cups of filtered water. All right, so I added 2 cups of rice. Now I'm gonna add 2 cups of water, right? Maybe just a smidget more of water so it doesn't come out as dry. So I add the water, and then I want to evenly distribute the rice. And as you can see for yourself, you're not seeing any clumps of oil float to the top of the water. And just give this one light stir just to make sure that the salt you added gets evenly distributed, and then just kind of even it out, right? And the machine knows you put 2 cups of water in, so it knows exactly how long to cook it for. You just close the lid, hit white rice as an option that you're gonna cook, and then start, and it automatically knows how long to cook it for. Just set it and forget it. All right, so as you can see, there's a boil of water now of the beans. Let's just give this one more light stir, right? And we're gonna line up our lid arrow with our handle arrow. Close that up, make sure that's nice and tight. Now we're gonna add our pressure regulator. Listen for the snap, right? Listen again, that snap. And as you can see, that one button is still flush with the handle. That's because there's no pressure on there. And once it heats up and pressure starts to be generated, you'll see that pop up. That's how you know that this thing's under pressure. All right, so now we're gonna go ahead and set our timer for 5 minutes on this and cook this just for 5 minutes, just to bring the flavors together of the sofrito and finish softening up the beans. All right, guys, so we cooked our beans, we added the sofrito, we closed the lid for the second time. Now we have our rice cooking, nice and simple. Remember, add your oil before you add the water so the oil sticks to the grain. It doesn't separate when you add the water. And that's it, we're just waiting now. The timer just finished on the second round for the beans. So let's go ahead and cool that pan off, take the lid off, wait for the wait for the rice to be done, and let's serve it up. Have a nice, delicious dish of black beans and rice. All right, guys, so as you see, our black beans are done. The timer on the rice sounded, so let's see what that looks like. Oh, look at that, absolutely perfect. It even steamed up the camera. Blow it off a little bit. If you can see, let me get a fork out of here. It's absolutely perfect. It completely falls apart. All the grains are individual. There's no clumping. It's not over dry. It's just wonderfully cooked to perfection. So let's get some rice on this plate here. It's got the olive oil, the sugar, or it's got the olive oil, the salt, nice and delicious. Jasmine rice. All right, let's get in there. Perfect, nice serving of rice in there. All right, now let's get these beans in here. If you can see the ratio in there is absolutely perfect, how that just pours over. You can see that wonderful beans in there, the sauce, right? Absolutely perfect, perfection. You get the garlic, the onions, the green peppers, the bacon, the olive oil, the bay leaf, everything in there. Just loaded with flavor, just the right amount of salt. Now let's try this and see how this tastes. All right, guys, so as you see, the rice and beans turned out absolutely perfect. The rice doesn't clump. It's nice and grainy, delicious. The beans, I couldn't ask for a better overall product. It's absolutely wonderful looking. So let's go ahead and try it and see what this tastes like. This is ridiculous. When I tell you this is like what Mom used to make, I'm not even exaggerating. I wish they had smell-o-vision and taste-o-vision now. This is just absolutely wonderful. And what's really cool about this is in the next day or two, these flavors are gonna come together even more. So you're gonna have an even better tasting product in the next day. You can pair this with the protein, nice steak, barbecued chicken on the grill, piece of fish, anything goes absolutely wonderful with this. If you feel you have too many beans, you can't eat them at once, you can put them in a Ziploc bag, freeze them, and they freeze for about 2 to 3 months, and just take out whatever you need for the day and unfreeze them, and they taste absolutely perfect. The flavor doesn't taste bad at all. So yeah, so there you go. Black beans, Cuban black beans and white rice, absolutely delicious, just like Mom used to make. It really is perfect. I'm gonna finish this here. Absolutely wonderful. I'll leave a link in the description below, all the stuff I used, the cooking utensils and so forth. All the ingredients are going to be in there as well. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please let me know, guys. If you have any other recipes you guys want me to try out, I have a ton of them up here that I make. I've been cooking for years. I'm actually pretty decent at it. Please let me know. Questions, comments, concerns, don't forget. And also don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. As always, guys, thanks for watching. Fred Gonzalez with G&G Productions. We'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching.